It's almost April, fool. Today's your last day to sign up for Obamacare, and if you've jumped through the flaming hoops and procured the infamous insurance, good for you, especially if you're a sickly, geritol-popping sexagenarian. But if you're a healthy, robust, formerly comfortable millennial, this new free insurance is going to have you swirling the toilet bowl of poverty, because with one crafty entitlement, your future has just been flushed. Maybe it's not that dramatic. I don't know. But in all honesty, no one knows yet. Believing a new entitlement that balances precipitously on the backs of the healthy and disaffected will somehow magically work, that makes fools of us all. Fracking quakes, Gwyneth-inspired mommy wars, and oil in Africa. And how much would you pay to look like Jennifer Lawrence? We'll answer these great riddles and many more. This is The Independents. Hi there, I'm Kennedy. Happy Monday. I'm here with Reason Magazine editor-in-chief, the tireless Matt Welch. Look at that collar. Donny Osmond, look out. Oi, oi! That thing can get up and by itself. And Camille Foster with a matching pocket square to my dress tonight. Very impressive. He is from Free Think Media. He devours Rothbard, von Mises, and who else? Hayek? Before lunch, he's that good. And together we are The Independents. So if you are in the mood for a Monday nut punch, we are all fists. Well, two sides don't represent all sides, you know that, but that didn't stop the left and right from coming out in full force to explain the bottom line in the fuzzy Obamacare numbers. Taking the floor for tonight's version of the two-party shuffle, it's Republican Senator John Barrasso versus fresh from the circus, Jay Carney.
I think they're cooking the books on this. People want to know the answers to that.
If we were cooking the books, don't you think we would have cooked them in October and November? We could have saved ourselves a lot of pain.
Oh, could you have? Because that's awesome, because corruption's great, and lying to the American people is pretty much sport, especially when you're in dire straits and super desperate. No, fool, you're the April Fool. You didn't even think about it, Carney. Small hands, smell like cabbage. So who's right? Is Obamacare a failure, or have a team of determined elves on unicorns magically anointed millions of exchange goers? Let's talk to the man who has provided the best and most in-depth ACA coverage in the world. It's Reason Magazine senior editor Peter Suderman. So 6 million people, really? I mean, does this mean it's a success? That's like hearing that Justin Bieber is well endowed.
So 6 million people have signed up for coverage. And that was by last week. Over the weekend, we saw really heightened activity on the website. We saw long lines. We saw record traffic at the call centers. And so there is a real surge in activity and for people trying to sign up for coverage. But sign-ups are not enrollments. This is something that a lot of people misunderstand, is that when you're signing up for coverage to be counted amongst that 6 million or more, however many it is, all you have to do is drop a plan into your shopping cart. And so it's as if
you are magically signed up. But does that mean that you are covered?
It does not mean you are covered. You're not covered until you pay the first month's premiums. And we know from insurance industry insiders that a large number of people, a significant percentage, are not paying their first month's premiums. And even of the people who pay their first month, many of them are not paying the second month. In California, it's about 15%. Other states, it's actually as high as 30%. And so there's this number is going to be reduced significantly.
When and by whom? I mean, is the administration going to be transparent about the number of people who are actually covered by the federal and state exchanges?
What they're saying is that they don't have that data. We've heard that before. There have been reports suggesting that, in fact, they do have this data and they're just maybe not collecting it all together to share it with us.
Yeah.
And then there's this other question of how many of these people actually had insurance beforehand. There are a number of reports indicating that perhaps as many as 70% of these new signups had insurance beforehand. And so are we really covering the uninsured? So this 6 million number just isn't the number, doesn't tell the whole story. There is a real surge, like I said, but it's not the final number.
I mean, why don't they put the NSA in charge? Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, they're spying on everyone.
You're assuming that they're competent too? That's the
competence
classic
never assumed.
Catastrophe. Suderman, I feel like there's a lot of jibber jabber every single week about Obamacare and the kind of talking points that we saw over there. Let's take the long view. September 30th of last year, if you would have told Jay Carney and all the other boobs in the White House on September 30th that March 31st looked like it does now, what would they have said?
Well, we know what Kathleen Sebelius said on, I believe it was September 30th, but that week, the week before Obamacare's exchanges opened, she said that success looks like at least 7 million people. And right now, if they have a really good...
not signups, enrollments.
At least 7 million people getting coverage through the law in the exchanges, private coverage. And right now, it looks like the top end number for signups, which again is going to be reduced when you get to actual enrollments, is maybe 6.5 or 6.7
That's pretty
million.
Close, though. Were they talking about?
But cut 15 or 20% out of that, and you're dropping that down by 1 million or more people, and so you're probably
like
looking between somewhere in 5 and 6 million people who've gotten coverage. Again, not all of those people were uninsured. Many of those people are just going to end up being folks who switched coverage.
Now, Suderman, my concern continues to be that critics of the ACA are focusing on the wrong thing when we talk about this number of people that are covered. It's a worthwhile conversation, but at the end of the day, the real question here is, are people getting coverage who didn't have insurance before, as you just pointed out? But secondarily, are we actually containing costs? Healthcare cost inflation was the huge problem beforehand and continues to be a problem now. I'm not certain that the ACA is actually going to be able to curtail that problem, and it almost seems like we're moving the goalpost here. No one can declare victory, even if 7 or 8 or 10 million people were to sign up, if the cost of insurance continues to rise.
On the question of whether or not this coverage is good, much of the, in addition to the private coverage offered through the exchanges, you also see a Medicaid expansion. Medicaid coverage is very poor coverage. The best study of Medicaid actually shows that there's no significant effect on health outcomes whatsoever for folks who get Medicaid versus not having insurance at all. And as far as costs go, if you look at premiums, you've got rumbles inside the insurance industry where they're saying that we're likely to see very large increases
Premium
in
spikes
premiums next year.
Yeah, I didn't mean to finish your sentence. I feel like I'm psychic.
You knew exactly what I was going to say.
No, I've read your fine work. You have done great reporting, and I appreciate you coming in on this most important deadline to paint a picture and make a table.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Peter Suderman. Very good. We will activate a party panel and tackle race, humor, and political deception. That's coming up next. A little later, we'll find out who's more corrupt, big oil companies or the African governments where the Texas tea springs forth. It's the Independents.
Don't rush, be peace and blush and piss. Get right like us and live. Master the art from the gift. Ken Zonzi, specialist. Rhythmized rhyme that persists. Twists and turns and learns to exist and earn. While learning the ritual, sacred, habitual, spiritual. All is today.
Welcome back to the Independents. Have we become so racially sensitive in this country that anyone who dares to wade into a discussion about race or poverty should be banished from the public stage? From Paula Deen to Paul Ryan with a dash of Colbert to season the dish. Bill Maher used a little sleight of hand to trick his audience into thinking Paul Ryan had overstepped his lily-white bounds when he sprinkled powdered sugar onto a hot chocolate topic. Take a look.
Something else Paul Ryan said. He said, when it comes to getting an education, too many of our young people just can't be bothered. They're sitting on couches for hours playing video games, watching TV. Instead of dreaming of being a teacher or a lawyer or a business leader, they're fantasizing about being a baller or a rapper. Oh, wait, that wasn't him. That was Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama said that.
No, I don't think this is a Republican.
Hush, silence.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, the audience didn't know what to do with it. They're like, wait, we just punked? That hurts. Well, we definitely need some reaction. Party panelists assemble. Let's welcome two of our brightest, happiest panelists yet. Santita Jackson is a gracious mentor, a pastor's daughter, and a Fox News contributor. And Basil Smikle is an adjunct professor at Columbia University. And he was once one of Hillary Clinton, that is, not Hillary Swank, because I don't think I would put that in his intro if he was one of her Democratic operatives, because that'd just be weird. So let me ask you guys, why can't two people say the same thing?
Now, what are you speaking of?
I'm speaking of Paul Ryan and Michelle Obama. Their quotes were contrasted on Bill Maher's show, and one was Paul Ryan's, the other was Michelle Obama's, and they essentially said the same thing.
Well, I think it speaks to our conceit about race and racism and class. I mean, because the fact is, economic class drives a certain set of attitudes, and your racial caste drives another. So I found it quite interesting that people would react the way that they did to this sleight of hand, if you will. I mean, because I said, well, you know, the fact is I know many African Americans who, and I'm not saying that the First Lady did this, I think she did not split the hairs when she really needed to, because I think that ballers and entertainers and on, you have to work very hard to rise to the top of your field. I think that was something that was missed in that comment. Having said all of that, you know, I think that race and class, we need to deal with that. We don't make the differentiation. We don't make the distinction. We need to understand the difference.
You know, it's interesting that you use the word caste, because I do think this is also significantly about class. And, you know, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about is the way that the President and First Lady talk to black people. There have been a couple of articles in The Atlantic about this. There was a conversation that took place when Obama addressed the Morehouse graduates. There's this sense that he can be talking down and be condescending, in particular to black men. And there are a lot of folks actually starting to pick up on that a little bit. So I think this plays not just into race issues, but class issues as well. And as we see more African Americans.
Is that problematic for him?
It's 2 years before the end of his presidency, no. But I think...
It should be.
I mean, it should be, but I also think...
Do you think that he deserves, I mean, people are criticizing it, but do you think that he's worthy of criticism for that?
I think that when you step into the public arena, you cannot be immune to criticism. You have to be immunized to an extent, because you can't let it stop you. But I think that a lot of what the president has said has been well-intentioned, but it's born of an experience, quite frankly, that he does not fully understand. And he said that in his books. You know, look, he did not grow up in the African-American community. Reverend Jackson, if I must say, got into a lot of trouble in 2008 because he said, look, I don't appreciate him talking down to African Americans. There's a way.
Although,
I think you can be.
Can you say the same thing about Michelle Obama? Because the comments that he read on the show were actually Michelle Obama's comments at Morgan.
I just said, as a singer myself, as someone who's in the arts, people do not give. Artists the credit that they deserve.
I think that's fair, but
they don't give a LeBron James the credit. If you
sure, but I don't think that's what they're getting at. The president has made similar comments. He's talked about cousin Pee Wee and them sitting on the sofa watching ESPN all day. The reality is that there is a culture like that.
And
to the extent that you participate in that sort of culture.
There's a culture like that in every community.
Of course there is. And interestingly,
but that's what I think. But that's what I think the president, when you talk about splitting hairs, that's what I think they don't do.
I agree.
Don't address the fact that takes place in every
I agree.
community.
And interestingly, Paul Ryan, for whatever reason, the two things have been conflated. Paul Ryan never mentioned race. He did talk about urban communities. There are lots of people who live in urban communities. And if there is a culture that looks anything like that, and if it happens to be in urban communities, even if it's elsewhere, then I think just acknowledging that Paul Ryan.
Well, you also have to look at Paul Ryan's intentions. I mean, what he said. It might have been really naive, but I don't think he meant any ill will.
No, he certainly didn't.
But you know, let me tell you something that really.
I don't think he did. I don't think he had bad intentions. I think that it was poorly worded and maybe doesn't come from
to say that people
direct
of color,
experience.
and I will assume that he was looking at people of color. He may not said it.
Every Republican wants to be Jack Kemp.
They need Jack Kemp, and they need Jack Kemp's experiences, because one of the things that Jack Kemp, who I had the privilege of having met in his lifetime, he got to know. He would have told you, I didn't know black people before I started playing football.
Yeah.
Then I played with them. I worked with them. Our families got to know each other. I learned something different, and that is what we need. The fact is, we have a history of racism in this country. No one wants to talk about that.
I'm not sure that's true.
Okay, you know what? Before we dive into another area of this topic, we're actually going to move on. It's another tempest of comedy and political correctness. Stephen Colbert poked fun at Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder's charity for Native Americans that uses the word Redskins in its title. Oh, Dan.
Snyder sent a letter to Redskins fans laying out a plan to start the Washington Redskins Original Americans Foundation.
Folks, this move by Dan Snyder inspires me because my show has frequently come under attack for having a so-called offensive mascot. My beloved character, Ching Chong Ding Dong. Ooh, I love tea. But I am willing to show the Asian community that I care by introducing the Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Sensitivity to Orientals or whatever.
He was obviously making fun of sweet old Dan there. Comedy Central's Colbert Report, their Twitter account later tweeted essentially the same joke, writing, quote, "I'm willing to show hashtag Asian community I care by introducing the Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Sensitivity to Orientals or whatever." That was at Colbert Report. Internet hashtagtivist Sui Park responded by starting the hashtag Cancel Colbert, which quickly trended on Twitter and started another national conversation about white privilege and satire gone sideways. If a joke that falls flat on a corporate-run Twitter means that the bit was based on is also an insensitive, does that mean that Stephen Colbert should somehow be punished for this?
Well, Sui Park, if I may jump in here, Sui Park said, look, I don't want his show to be canceled. What I'm trying to do
Why say cancel Colbert?
No, wait a minute. I mean, because she wanted to start a conversation about Asian prejudice, but also about privilege. The fact is, she has been called on the carpet, how dare you, by progressives. How dare you call for him to have his show canceled? Which is, underneath all of that, is privilege. And, you know, the fact that...
Or anti-censorship.
Well, no, but, you know, it's not just anti-censorship. Let me put it this way. You cannot tell a hurting man or woman how to holler. If she's offended...
I suppose that's fine.
If she... I promise you it is.
Sure.
And what she needs to do...
Whatever they
don't
like.
talk about her, talk to her. Ask her, why are you offended? Because there are nuances.
I'm not attacking her. I just think it's interesting that I don't think... He's a comic. You know, he's not Alec Baldwin who is saying certain things in fits of rage. You know, here is a guy who is pointing out the absurdity in what Dan Snyder is doing by making a claim that is obviously so outrageous and so wholly false. He knows, and he's assuming that his audience is there with him. It didn't translate the same.
I think that's a joke. Yeah, and I think that's the issue, that if you're going to make this joke in the context of a segment is one thing. When you continue it to the internet, social media,
on a Twitter handle, when you abstract a line and put it on Twitter, it doesn't
where there's no context.
But it's still a Twitter. Well, there is context. It's Stephen Colbert's Twitter handle. All they do is trot out jokes all day long. Well, actually, it is the official. It was the official show Twitter handle.
But that's not his.
And that is. But again, at any rate, it's the official show Twitter handle. All they do is tell jokes. The notion that anyone would get outraged and bent out of shape about this is totally absurd. And sure, you're allowed to get hurt feelings over this, but not every manifestation of phony outrage warrants concern.
But I would tell you, if he made a joke,
and it's almost contemptible.
It also, well, guys, it doesn't fail the intention test.
But no, I must say this. No, I tell you what's offensive to me: the fact that you would call someone's offense contemptible. No, Camille, wait. Because if I am offended, then what you do, no, hold on, because what you do is you ask
me. We have 10 seconds, Santita.
You ask me what's wrong. Just ask me. Don't berate me. Ask me.
You have the last word?
Boom.
That's it. That was the last one. Boom! All right. Well, our
I'm
panel.
not trying to go kaboom. Yes, you know.
No, we've got more interesting topics to sink our talons into in a later panel discussion. So stick around. You, of course. Now there was a rumble in the concrete jungle, but was the earth knocking because of too much of fracking and quakes and irrational conspiracies? Oh, they take us to the worst places. Stay with us. Oh, earthquake.
Baby, come back.
Welcome back to The Independents, where we like everything about you, except when you turn into a moody communist. As a resident, drinking. As a resident of Los Angeles, I'm so used to earthquakes. I'm so over them. God, like working moms have such an easier time in earthquakes. Driving on a TV show. The Gwyneth fight, that's later, don't worry. But this weekend, the earthquake was no different. I was reading to my girls Friday night when the bed started rolling around, and I thought I'd have to call in the priest for some off-hours exorcism. But luckily, it was just an earthquake. And who knows if the press was just all bored from the wall-to-wall plane madness. Maybe they're connecting earthquake dots and making a mountain out of a series of unrelated tremors, or maybe all this errant Southern California fracking has finally caught up with us. The LA City Council wants to look into the fracking connection to see if the Westwood quake on St. Patrick's Day could somehow have been set off by a little bit of hydraulic underground action. Could it be causing all these earthquakes in Southern California? Could that destabilize the earth, setting us up for the big one? John Rundle, he joins us to get all tectonic. He's a seismologist and a professor at UC Davis. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
So, John, we've had a lot of quakes, small and medium sized lately in Southern California. Are they related, and what does it mean? What does your expertise tell you?
Well, earthquakes, this earthquake was probably a garden variety plate tectonic earthquake. As far as we know, it was on the Puente Hills thrust fault, which is a major fault which underlies Los Angeles and could produce an earthquake of magnitude 7.5.
Ooh, what would that do to downtown LA, by the way? If a 7.5 hit on that fault specifically, what would that do to downtown LA?
Well, the USGS has estimated anywhere between 3,000 and 18,000 deaths and possibly $200 billion in damage.
Wow. My God. I mean, does that make buildings crumble? Does that make skyscrapers just fall to the ground? What would it look like?
Well, in the Northridge earthquake, that was about, 40 miles away from downtown. And what happened was that the steel frames in those buildings cracked in ways they were not supposed to crack, taking them outside what we call their elastic limit. So, in fact, if there were another major earthquake, it happened immediately after, those buildings could have failed. And failure means partial collapse or full collapse.
John, is there a snowball's chance in hell that fracking caused any earthquake that happened in Southern California ever?
Let's review what fracking actually does. So basically there's two types. There's low volume and high volume fracking. Low volume involves injecting like a swimming pool size volume of water into the ground, into a well, to create fractures. Super fracking, which is the process that George Mitchell developed in the 80s and 90s and is used today for the kind of gas production that you see in South Dakota, the Bakken Shale and the Marcellus Shale in New York and the Barnett Shale in Texas. That involves like 100 swimming pools volume of water. And basically what they do is they drill a well down and then they drill it horizontally. They turn it horizontally, which they can do with modern technology. They then pack it off and pump the fluid in. And the fluid itself can be toxic. So it's got stuff in there called slick water, which reduces the viscosity of it, and it's got proppants, which, like sand, which hold the fractures open. Well, once you frack the formation, you actually withdraw that fluid, and you have to do something with it because you can't just dispose of it on the surface for environmental reasons. So what's done is to take that fluid and pump it deep underground, down 3-4 kilometers deep, and it's that deep injection that causes the earthquakes in places like Oklahoma, Colorado, and other areas.
But LA.
So could this have caused, yes, the Westwood quake? The fear was at the veteran site, perhaps there was some fracking that made those plates unstable.
It's unlikely, in my opinion, because the Monterey Shale, which is a formation that's being fracked in California, is actually fairly permeable. But the only people who would know that are the people who actually did the fracking itself. And I don't know what the volume of fluid pumped in there was, but if it wasn't a lot, then it probably was not the cause of the earthquake.
California is known for some quackadoos, especially the governor, not really known for fracking. Odd fact.
Well, fracking is difficult to do in a formation that's as permeable as the Monterey Shale. It's much easier to do in these tight gas formations that you find in other states and deep sedimentary basins.
All right, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Sure.
And hopefully there will be no more earthquakes ever again. because it's so unsettling to young children. A crazy judge wants to get back on the bench. Darth Vader just might save Ukraine. And a new app tells you when to tinkle. It's the topical storm, and it's next. Good evening, Cherry Blossom. Don't be confused by the barrage of changes in the news system. Spring is here, and thus blooms the stories that make up the topical storm. Topic number one, a judge in Illinois who's been hospitalized a number of times for mental illness wants back on the bench. In her words, she snapped like a pencil when she shoved a sheriff's deputy after a 2012 episode. She's been collecting her $182,000 a year paycheck since she got all nervous. But she and her psychiatrist pinky promise she's well medicated, she's been deeply analyzed, and she won't fall off the slippery wagon of mental instability anytime soon. But what if she does? How would you feel if your sentence was impacted by a judge with a schizoaffective disorder who snapped like an even flimsier balsa pencil? Aren't judges held to a higher standard than the rest of us who can function while crazy without ruining people's lives?
She has been hospitalized for mental illness 9 times.
9 times.
Over the last 20 years. What do you have to do in Illinois to get fired from your public service job at some point?
You can truly screw with someone's life if you're having a bad day, let alone if you're having a bad episode.
She was hauled out of the courtroom catatonic on a stretcher once. I have a lot of sympathy.
You've
and
read her
empathy.
memoir.
I mean, it's tough to be mentally ill,
very, very good friends.
But you don't have to be a judge.
I have a great deal of compassion and sympathy for mentally ill people. I truly do. I think mental illness is desperately misunderstood in this country. But having said that, there are certain professions that maybe you shouldn't undertake if you've had so many debilitating episodes. Am I wrong?
I think I'd probably agree, especially in this particular case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Topic number two, Ukraine is close to falling to the dark side, not because of Russia's invasion, or potential one, but because a guy from the Ukrainian Internet Party who calls himself Darth Vader is threatening to run for president. He strides the streets flanked by stormtroopers, and he promises to, quote, make an empire out of a republic, to restore former glory, to return lost territories and pride for this country. From that quote, you might assume that's a soundbite straight from Moscow. It sounds more like Darth Putin, which also sounds like a gynecological condition. Darth Putin.
That is not appetizing.
That was actually Camille. He didn't go to Jamaica the other week. It was to Ukraine. Former communist countries have the best weirdo political parties. The
Ukrainian Internet Party is kind of awesome.
So it's really great. The Czechs have the Friends of Beer Party, who sit around and have topless gals hand out steins of beer as you're walking around. It's awesome.
I would totally vote for that guy.
Topic number three. What's the worst part about seeing movies other than having to eat top ramen for a week because they're so expensive now? It's having to pee at the climax of the movie when your bladder might burst from sheer overcapacity and tinkle stress. Well, now there's a new app that lets you know the best time to go during the film. Run Pee knows the plot and vibrates when you should take a powder and evacuate any excess liquids. I snack and drink way too much during the previews, and 2 hours in, I can no longer contain the dam. This is perfect, exactly what technology is made to do.
This is awful and terrible, and it should be stopped. You should not be drinking and eating if you have to get up during the movie. I hate when people get up in front of me and walk out during the movie. This is terrible.
You're an authoritarian.
Pee before you go to the
Plain and simple.
to the movie.
Jennifer Lawrence has the world by the tail. She's young, beautiful, talented, an award-winning actress, funny and sought after, which means people will do really irrational things to become her.
People started comparing me to her on the street, at my workplace. Her personality is spunky and fun. I can appreciate that her body is banging.
That's right. That's a woman named Kitty. And she has screwed the pooch and raided her daughter's college fund, getting 6 plastic surgeries totaling $25,000 so she can win the Hunger Games, or at least become the Hunger Games heroine. Her doppelganger. Dope is more like this. This broad looks nothing like J-Law. Now, I am no stranger to this phenomenon. I know how creepy it can be when people want to be you. In fact, this woman spent over $400,000 to look just like me. And you know what? I gotta say, very good likeness. Worth every penny. Coming up, oh, Gwyneth, how do you inspire such wrath? And you know what tomorrow is? It should be a national holiday. Hey, guess what?
Yes.
Did you hear that Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow are getting back together?
I had no idea.
They're not. It's April Fool's.
Tomorrow's April Fool's.
Shh.
Panic on the streets of London. Panic on the streets of Birmingham. I wonder to myself.
Heather, hi. So embarrassed and disheveled. Welcome back to The Independence, where we celebrate April Fool's Day because it's what makes America great. Oh my God, did you hear the Beatles got back together?
No, I don't think it's true.
April Fool's!
Happy April Fool's to you guys.
Did you hear that Beyonce is pregnant with the president's baby?
No, I did not.
Can you believe it?
No.
April Fool's. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
The interrupting cow.
Interrupting cam. Oh, yes, I've heard that one.
Did you know they deported Justin Bieber?
No, I did not know that.
He punched a nun in the face.
Oh,
That's all it took.
I don't believe you.
April Fool's. Oh, it's April Fool's already. Did you hear that Vladimir Putin punched Michelle Obama in the face?
Michelle Obama?
Yes.
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 Very, very good woman.
He punched her in the face.
Ah.
Ugh. April Fool's. That means it's fake. Guess what? What? I'm pregnant. Well, guess what else? It's your baby.
It can be your girl.
April Fool's.
All right, today's April the 1st.
No, tomorrow is.
Today is.
Tomorrow.
Oh, April Fool's.
That's funny. She got me. I'm so excited to have her baby. Our panel is back, Santita and Basil. So let me ask you guys, I want to put you on the spot. What is the greatest April Fool's stunt you've ever pulled or had pulled on you? I mean, you've got brothers, so you must have been worked as a kid.
Look, they just have fun with me. They always did. You know, short sheeting the bed, you know, putting the pail of water above my door. I mean, oh, they were dreadful.
Oh.
You all were dreadful.
Yeah, somebody pulled a gun on me.
That's not funny.
That's true. That wasn't a joke either.
Was it on April 1st at least?
No. I know, right?
You don't understand the April
Is it?
Fool's.
We didn't have that in the hood, man. Fools in the hood. We didn't have that. Sorry.
What about you?
Published an edition of our campus student newspaper where we included everything that we knew was true, but we couldn't prove. But it was just, hey, it's April Fool's, and we got in a lot of trouble.
Oh, no.
It was awesome.
I've never been imaginative enough to take advantage of April Fool's Day, so I'm going to have to work on it tonight, try to get it right tomorrow.
We did the burning bag of dog crap on our neighbor's doorstep, and he threatened to sue us.
We did that all the time.
That was last year, right?
That wasn't.
When I was a young person with my brothers. They're a bad influence. Well, speaking of bad influences, or at least badness, I feel bad for Gwyneth Paltrow. Not because she's a victim of her life circumstances, but because she's so out of touch. Every time she opens her mouth, people actively despise her just a little bit more. Recently, Gwyneth told E! quote, "I think it's different when you have an office job because it's routine and, you know, you can do all the stuff in the morning and then you can come home in the evening. When you're shooting a movie, they're like, we need you to go to Wisconsin for 2 weeks and then you work 14 hours a day. And that part of it is very difficult. I think to have a regular job and be a mom is not as, well, of course there are challenges, but it's not like being on set." Oh my God, she's insane. She's supposed to be getting sympathy right now. Well, Kim Jong-un #1 took a break from blowing crap up in South Korea to respond on Twitter. Quote, "In my darkest moments, I remind myself that as much as people hate me, they still like me more than Gwyneth Paltrow." Wow. That's from Kim Jong-un. Why do people hate her so much?
I don't know. Why don't you ask someone who subscribes to her weirdo newsletter, don't you?
Goop? No, I don't. I've been on Goop. I've taken a stroll and seen all the things that I can't afford. One of my favorite things that she ever put on Goop is, if you're gonna get anything in your backyard, get a wood-burning pizza oven. I just got one, and I have to tell you, it's worth the investment. Yeah, because you make like $70 million a year, you freak. And I want to like her. I do.
Yeah, I don't.
She was
have
great
any-
in Seven,
this is-
especially at
this
the
is-
end.
just seems really disconnected from the average person.
I think it's let's defend her. It's a grass is greener. I mean, you know, she has this life, and it's obviously a pretty good life, although she's going through a rough patch. But you always imagine what it would be like to have something else, and you fantasize about it, even if that's something else.
Yeah, but don't demean people who. Trust me.
Open your mouth to a journalist.
I mean, you come into my neighborhood and deal with all of the stuff that the
and all that great stuff you get to do in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
With those office jobs
pulled on me for April Fool's Day and things like that. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Let her have that life for a minute and see if she makes fun of it.
I mean, or Shanisha Taylor. You've heard about this Arizona woman, homeless, mother of two. She was arrested and charged with child abuse. She left her 2 children in the car. She's tone deaf. And this is when one needs to stay in one's lane. We don't make this social commentary when you're not equipped.
It's like Marie Antoinette. Someone compared it to Marie Antoinette without giving people cake.
Yeah, and that woman was arrested because she was trying to go to a job interview.
She was in a job interview.
She was in a job interview. Right. She had to leave her kids in the car because she had nobody to take care of kids.
And she brought the children into the job interview. She's not being professional.
Yeah, see, it's hard for Gwyneth because you know, she's got 10 assistants, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of.
But let's not hate on the wealthy. I'm not trying to do that. I just think that she's.
I'm not trying to bag on the wealthy, just the supremely out of touch. All right. Well,
there you go.
Thank you very much, Santita and Basil.
Here.
Glorious as ever. The director of a fantastic documentary is here to talk about African oil. Who pays the price when the sweet crude bubbles from the earth? We will discuss next. It's The Independence. Independence, where we are always gushing with desire, curiosity, and oil. Africa is a confusing place that many people have tried to understand and fix over the centuries. No matter where you are on the continent, there is an abundance of resources, especially West Africa, where oil has sprouted from a number of formerly poor countries. But why don't the citizens benefit from the fresh billions?
Our people have seen that what comes out of our land is making some other people to be known as big men, big people, and the rest of it. Like you are too, you would want to become big too, isn't it? So Nigerians are not exception. Everybody wants to become big, and that's the prayer of everybody. I would want to become big. My son will want to become big. You too would want to become big, isn't it?
All right, that's from a new documentary. It's called Big Men, that with unprecedented access shows the process of finding oil in Ghana, tapping those first barrels, and the greed and corruption that threatens to turn another African nation into a cautionary tale. The documentary's director joins us, Rachel Boynton. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So he talks about big men and that. And before I talk to you about the access, I want to ask you, are the big men who create the most corruption the oil men, or the leaders of these poor countries who seem to siphon a majority of the profits for themselves?
Well, my take as a filmmaker was always that it's really complicated. And this isn't a film that's pointing fingers in one direction or the other, which is one of the things that I think is really strong about it. You know, it's not saying these are the good guys, these are the bad guys.
That's what makes it so much more interesting. You have to draw your own conclusions. But it is, you know, that is the theme. There are these big men, and clearly the oil men are big men just as much as the chiefs and the kings and the governors and the heads of state.
Right. And the film is intercutting the story of Ghana and the story of Nigeria. And the story in Ghana is really about this oil company that goes in, this American Texan oil company.
A relatively small company that gets a huge contract from Ghana where they've never had oil before.
Exactly. And they were financed by Blackstone Capital Partners and Warburg Pincus, so they had a lot of money. And they went in and they found oil where no one had. And it led to ultimately this huge fight, right, between the government and the company. And I followed it over many years.
Many years. And you were given unprecedented access. I mean, the access really is incredible.
And this is typically something that's been described as like the resource curse. But I wonder, I mean, the thing that is very much the same about both Nigeria and Ghana is that corrupt class of politicians that seem to be very much interested in enriching themselves, not so much this failing of capitalism. I don't know, at least that was my take.
Well, I mean, we could have a long debate about that, but one thing I would say is the people I have the least amount of sympathy for are the corrupt politicians. I mean, they're supposed to be representing their people.
And I found it immensely frustrating to witness certain things. You know, there are places where people are completely not served.
Yeah, no, these centralized governments were really, you know, when there was centralized oil production, they were really hurting the people who are truly desperately poor. Let me ask you this. How is Ghana today compared to 2007 when you started this? 7 years later, is it a better situation than Nigeria?
Oh, well, you know, it's going to take a long time to see what happens in Ghana. We're not going to know that tomorrow. And I knew that going into the film, which is part of the reason why I went to Nigeria next door, to see sort of what happens over time.
And what could happen.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, hopefully they will avoid the resource curse. Yeah, this is a story that infects you, and you will certainly, I will continue to follow it. Thank you for telling this story.
Of course.
Great. Beautiful. Big men. You should check it out. It's pretty awesome. All right, coming up next, Where It's Matt. New information about torture and whether or not it helped get us bin Laden. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Independence. It is time for Where It's Matt. Tonight, we're talking about one of the most divisive issues in the world. Did waterboarding lead us to Osama bin Laden? A Senate report that might be released as soon as this week says it did not. So, Matt, torture, bin Laden, what does it get us and what has it gotten us so far?
So when Osama bin Laden was killed, Peter King, congressman from New York, went on Bill O'Reilly's show on Fox News, and he said, the thing that we must know about this is that we were able to do this because we tortured Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. We waterboarded this guy, and we got this information. So all you critics of waterboarding need to realize that this is important. Turns out, according to the Senate Intelligence Committee, which commissioned a huge report, $40 million, they tried to interview every single person who has ever been in CIA captivity during the War on Terror. It concluded that there wasn't any bit of actionable information gained from waterboarding that had anything to do with getting bin Laden. So the very one example that everyone always uses to justify waterboarding turns out not to be true.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So this report came out in 2012. In December, Dianne Feinstein and John McCain and Barack Obama, to some degree, have been trying to publicize this, to get this out, to release it. The CIA has been trying to block them, but now Dianne Feinstein looks like she might have the votes. They're going to vote on it in the committee as soon as Thursday, and we might finally be able to see a report that'll tell us a lot about what kind of weird turn this country went in after 9/11.
And will this increase the chasm between the Senate and the CIA?
We can only hope, because then, and only then, will the Senate start using the kind of oversight that the CIA so desperately needs to have.
All right, very good. Gentlemen, thank you. And all of you, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to catch us every night, except for Thursday, at 9 and midnight. You can go to our website right now for our live after show, The Independence After Hours. If you haven't been there, go. This minute, it's going to be good tonight. It's foxbusiness.com/theindependence. And we're going to bring Santita and Basil back for some great conversation that you will certainly enjoy. Tomorrow night, it is bigger and better and louder. For Matt Welch and Camille Foster, I'm Kennedy, wishing you a good night. Thank you.